Hi, teacher friends. This is Module 3, Lesson 1. We are talking about consistency in this lesson. So, what is consistency? Well, a person who is consistent is regular, even, steadfast, orderly. In teacher world or teacher speak, consistency means that you follow through on procedures, consequences, rules every single time. It's hard. Any teacher will tell you that it is hard to stay consistent for so many different reasons. But we have to be consistent in our classrooms because once we've created this amazing classroom management plan, if we're not consistent, our students are going to stop following our plan. So, in your classroom, do your students know the consequences of their actions? Do they think, oh, well, sometimes she will follow through and sometimes she won't? Then you are not being consistent. If you are being a consistent teacher every day, your students know exactly what will happen if they are rude to someone, or if they don't turn in their homework, or if they decide to make a mess at their desk. They know exactly what you're going to do because you're consistent and you follow through on your consequences that you've set up. So, your students, if you're not staying consistent, your students are going to test you over and over and over because sometimes they get in trouble and sometimes they don't. So, let's say you've got two girls who like to argue back and forth, and they will try to sit in your class and argue all the time. And sometimes you follow through with your consequence, you pull them over, you have them stay after class and get it figured out. Sometimes you're just tired and you just don't feel like dealing with it and you don't really do anything. Well, then to those girls, it's going to signal that you're not always going to follow through with what you say. And sometimes they can get away with it, so it's probably worth it to keep displaying that behavior. So this module is called Building an Engaged and Motivated Classroom. So why would I include a lesson on consistency in this module? It's because your students' motivation and their engagement, it's going to suffer if you are not consistent. Teachers who are consistent have students who feel secure. They are willing to take risks. They know what's going to happen if they display positive behavior or negative behavior. They know what's going to happen if someone makes fun of them. They know what to expect in their classroom and from their teacher. So they are going to feel much more connected to you and they are going to feel more secure in your class. So we've created this amazing classroom management plan, but there is a key to making it work all year, and that key is consistency. Sometimes when you're in the middle of a classroom situation, maybe you've got 2 or 3 things going on, it's easy to just say, I don't want to deal with this right now. I'm just going to ignore. You can't do that. And I'm talking to myself too. Every teacher will say, hey, yeah, it's hard to be consistent. It's really not easy to stay consistent every day because you're going to have good days and bad days. So, what I've found helpful is when I am feeling like I don't want to be consistent, I just want to ignore the behavior that's going on. I remind myself of 3 truths about consistency, and I think that they will help you too because they are pretty universal. So, truth number 1, without consistency, your classroom climate is going to suffer. Your students, especially the ones that are more difficult, will test you again and again and again because they've seen that you are not going to consistently give consequences or consistently address that behavior. So they will take that opportunity to push their limits and see exactly what your stopping point is. And we all know that it's not fun to be in a classroom where the teacher is being tested over and over and over, because that means that there's not a lot of learning going on. So of course, like I said, learning is going to suffer, misbehavior is going to increase because the teacher is not dealing with the behaviors that they already said were not acceptable. Second truth, without consistency, many of your students will resent you. You cannot let your personal preferences show. So, for example, if Layla is blurting out all the time, always interrupting, and you get on to her every single time. But Matthew, he blurts too, and he interrupts too. But you don't really say anything to him because you really like him and he doesn't mean it. You're not being consistent. And Layla and some of your other students are going to resent you for that. They're going to say things like, why do you just pick on me? Why does he get away with everything? Why is he your favorite? You have to be consistent with all of your students, no matter how you feel about them individually. So, truth 3, without consistency, you will become frustrated. You have to rely on this classroom management plan that you make. When you toss the plan aside and think, oh, the kids will be fine, then those negative behaviors are going to increase and you're going to get frustrated. How does frustration come out when in regards to a teacher? Well, you are yelling. You are punishing the entire class. You are having power struggles with students. So it's really important that you stick to your classroom management plan and you come into school every day with the same plan, the same consequences, the same expectations, and you follow through with them every single time. So in conclusion, take a deep breath. When you are having a difficult time with students or with some situation, just take a deep breath. You don't need to respond immediately. You can take a few seconds, breathe, think through it in your head, know your classroom management plan completely, inside and out, so that you know exactly what you have told students is acceptable and not acceptable. When you see students, when students see you being consistent and always enforcing your procedures and your rules and expectations, they will feel more secure and they will let you teach because they know they are not going to get away with anything less than perfect behavior. So in this lesson, we talked about consistency. On your lesson sheet in the classroom management section, being consistent every single day is really difficult, but it is so worth it. I want you to write 3 truths about consistency that you can add to your classroom management plan. These are things that you will remind yourself of periodically throughout the school year to help you remember the reasons why it is so important to stay consistent with your students. So this was a great lesson. I thank you so much for listening, and we will see each other again in the next lesson.